Good afternoon, Cheryl.
Good afternoon, Peter.
It's a great pleasure, to talk to each other and even being filmed. I have been thinking that for the Awareness Day of MPN, I bring a few of my friends together, and they have a few words about the MPN, and obviously, there I cannot miss you. So, just a few words about you. I mean, you're not a patient, but you are a caregiver, and you had to go for the experience of all the bad signs of MPN with your husband, and whom I still remember very well when we met in the big meetings. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that out of this you have decided to give help to the patients. Today you have a very important advocacy groups in Canada. You have a foundation, an MPN foundation in Canada. So in a very, very short period of time, you have made your way through, and you have a very, very strong position today out of Canada. So it's a very, very big pleasure that you're here, Cheryl.
Thank you for having me, Peter. It's wonderful to be here and help you in this very worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah. It's a pleasure. Okay, my question to you is, what is the most impactful way to drive awareness of MPN and their signs and symptoms?
So, Peter, what my thoughts on helping patients and feeling that the feeling of not being empowered or not having control over their disease that they've been diagnosed with is really, I think, paramount for patients and their caregivers or their ecosystems. And so my thoughts about impact, or what is the most impactful way to drive awareness about the MPN blood cancers and their signs and symptoms, is to acknowledge the burden that the disease has on the quality of life that patients have. So when we have a disease such as myeloproliferative neoplasms, or MPNs as we call them, ET and PV and MF, we have to acknowledge the burden that this disease has on the patient. And that is something that the patients need to be empowered with. And that is, they need to communicate that with their physician, and both the patient and their care partner or their ecosystem and the physician need to work together to be able to drive not drive the empowerment, but help the patient be more empowered in articulating the burden that this disease has on them, and truly letting the physician know how the patient is feeling. And that, I believe, is how we are going to really spawn and be able to make changes to the disease, so that physicians, really, that the hematological community knows and understands the burden of the illness that the patients are feeling. We know that the hematological community, when the patients go to the clinic visit, that there's only a very short period of time that the doctor will have with the patient. And a lot of times the blood numbers and the physical examination will take up a great deal of that time in that clinic visit. And the opportunity to really talk with the patient and say, how are you feeling? And understand the burden of the illness that is thrust upon the patient is really left to a very minimum. And one of the very biggest accomplishments that I'm very proud of, and I know will be very impactful in not only our Canadian MPN community, but in 2022, it will be a global initiative, is our quality of life tracking tool app for patients to be able to track their own symptoms, be able to articulate how they're feeling, with the disease, empower them to take control over the burden that this illness has on them, and communicate that with their physician. And then the physician will have that data and that information to be able to have that communication opportunity with the patient prior to the clinic visit. So going forward in our future, I think that this is going to have a great deal of impact on the patient physician or hematologist relationship, as well as for a research community. And I think that is what is going to have a huge impact on the disease, the burden that it has on patients, and how it's treated in the future. Because once we have a better understanding of how the burden affects patients, perhaps we may not have a cure for the disease where it puts it in, into a total remissive state. But perhaps this information will be able to allow our physicians and our researchers to come up with a better treatment option, or augment the treatment options that we do have currently or in the pipeline, to help patients live a more robust life and feel better and empower themselves to have more control over their disease. So I think that hopefully that's answered your question, but I think that for me, that is what is going to be our futuristic impact for our patients, to have more, to give them more empowerment, and will make a significant impact in the MPN community globally, in articulating the burden of the disease and their signs and the symptoms of the disease to their physicians, the physician community in general, and our research community outside of that.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I mean, it's very important that first of all, we use the new tools which we have available today in order to empower the patients. And then, we have a sort of problems which we have to settle is really the information which many hematologists are not having. They do not have all the information on the MPNs. But I think we are on a very positive way. We have all these initiatives which are going around globally, and I'm convinced we will have the next coming years very, very big positive changes.
Absolutely. I really say that when I talk to new patients, or I talk to patients, as much as, it's distressing that they have this disease, I have to tell them that there is a great deal of promise and hope right now and in the immediate future for MPNs, because there is so much research. There is so much time and energy devoted to this blood cancer that, there is nothing but hope, inspiration, knowledge, and education for our patient community to be empowered and to be able to live a very fruitful and robust life going forward in the future. No longer is it an opportunity to, when you get a diagnosis of an MPN blood cancer, of doubt and despair. It really is an opportunity now to know that our medical community is working very hard and diligently to make huge strides and look for a cure, absolutely, but make huge strides so that patients can live a better, more robust life with this disease, and put the disease in a chronic state where they can live to a ripe old age of perhaps 100, but certainly, and have good quality of life during the years that they have the diagnosis for.
Great. Thank you very much, Cheryl. It was a pleasure to have you here, to have you.
Absolutely. My pleasure as well.
I wish you all the best, and we will be in touch.